guest here, Devon Kerr. I think I've heard this name before. You know you're into a song when you start singing the lyrics already and you've only just heard it for the first time. I'm like, fix a bookshot. That's pretty dope. Okay, from now on, we're just going to ask the guest who they like, and I'm going to start playing new stuff because it's up to me.
It's a real vibe, Danny. It's a real vibe.
Oh my God, that was really good. I liked everything about that. Usually the vocalists kill it for make it or kill it for me. So like if I don't like the singer, the music could be amazing and I'm just like, nah, this sucks. Like I hate Rush. I hate the band Rush and I don't care who knows it because whoever their singer is, I can't even be asked to remember his name because I don't.
Lee.
What is it?
Geddy Lee.
Oh, wasn't that I thought that was like the drummer or something. I don't know. See, again, I care so little about it. Then that I just don't care. But now I'm in a very good mood because I'm going to go to the gym later, and that's what's going to be on my playlist. Welcome to the happy hour, friends, family, countrymen. Lend me your ears. My name is Danny Akotski. I work here at Trimarc Security along with Dev Badloo, Jake ... Horse, and Brandon Colley. They are security consultants here at, well, two of them are security consultants. The other one is a lowly, filthy developer, red teamer person. But that's Dev, and that's fine. We accept them. Nice background, by the way, Dev. We can actually see some stuff back there now.
Show you my real background.
Yeah, well, I don't believe you. Move something, touch something, so I can believe you. Like, move one of the signs, so I know it's real.
I had the exact same thing with him.
Back there.
Jake, your mics are screwed up again. I think you're on a different mic.
What?
Again.
Fine. No one cares what Jake has to say.
But while we're fixing our audio issues, don't worry, we've only done this 35 times. While we're handling that, I want to introduce. I get especially giddy and excited, like a little girl, when I have some of my favorite people on this show. Like we've had Dave Kennedy on here, we've had Carlos Perez on here, especially people who I've known for in this business, at least as long as I've been in this business, and people who I can now, even if I haven't talked to them in quite a long time, I still reference them to other people. Like I routinely get the question of, like, who do you look up to in this industry and security as a hacker? Like, who did you learn from? What names stick in your head from early in your career that have the most profound effect on you? And Devon Kerr is always one of those names. Devon is founder of the security labs, right, at Elastic?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, my career started a long time ago, actually, in a totally different domain. But yeah, right now I've created the security labs function just as a extension of what technologists can do for humanity. If you want to think about it abstractly, sharing knowledge and resources that folks just literally cannot get. That unless you got the right education, the right job, the right circumstance, even, you might not get to learn that thing. That's an experience you wouldn't get. So we try and democratize that a little bit.
Yeah, you mentioned you had when I met you, and I don't even know how long into your career you were at that point. I met you when you were at Mandiant, so I don't even know how many years you were in at that point.
Yeah, so that was I think that was probably closer towards the end of my my Mandiant FireEye career. My career started in the 90s, doing like ISP operations and network engineering, and I was a FreeBSD neckbeard sort of admin when I was a junior guy, and that's how I found my first compromise. That's why I call it my Dorothy and Oz moment. Because there I was one day looking through the logs, which everybody's done, and I just saw some directional net flow. I can still remember it. This was 97, like some directional network metadata that should not have been there, and just pull that thread. And I think that's when I think about investigators, that's what I think of, is like that person who they're going to skim over it and then stop,
right,
and then go right back to unravel the sweater. And that's been my whole career, is just pulling threads,
Yeah, I remember that was when I knew that I really loved doing this stuff. Like my first couple of gigs, I didn't know what I was looking at. Like you could show me like a Nmap output, right? And I could like, oh, look at all the pretty numbers and the ports and stuff. I don't know what any of this means. And then the more that I got into it, which like I think I really hit my beginning of the stride of understanding and working for Mandy at my first time, because it was twice that I did that, and working with David Bianco on his team and writing, like learning how to write detections and things like that, and then going through like those logs and those outputs and be like, oh, what was that thing? Oh, that's not supposed to be there. And then, but even if it was something like, oh, it ends up being benign or whatever, and you want that itch, like once you get, at least for me, that little taste of seeing like the WTF of things, you want to find it, right? Like that's the most interesting stuff to me. That's how I knew I was going to be a lifelong analyst, no matter what I was doing.
Well, and I think that's also the trait, right? You know, it's not necessarily that you can be taught the mindset, but intuitively, you know, we've evolved with a certain set of, maybe call them like primitive skills that every human being is born kind of aware of. You know, those are tools that anybody can learn to use a little bit better. I tend to think like what we know is like occult knowledge. And what I mean is like secret knowledge that people have like a lot of ideas and maybe misconceptions about. But when I hire people, one of the things we try and like beat into the new classes is always, you know, we're not special. Anybody can learn to do this. Like there's a person out there who's never had the opportunity to learn what you did. Maybe that's all the difference in the world. But from a technical perspective, you know, if you've got those basics, you can go anywhere with it. You know, you could apply it to vulnerability research. You could do intelligence analysis. You could be a malware researcher, like, you know, and the use case plugs in anywhere. You know, companies like I work for that are developing security solutions, but also people who are using them, you know?
Yeah, that was, yeah, like going into life skills. And one of the big reasons that we asked Devon to come on was our boss, our founder, our CTO, Sean Metcalf, was like, hey, you know, I was talking to another buddy of mine. Like, it was a really great conversation, and you should really have him on. I was like, oh, who's that? It was, oh, Devon Kerr. Of course it was Devon. Of course Devon was the person he was talking to. And Sean and I have had conversations like that too, where it's now your brain at a certain point just switches over to using it as life skills, right? Like something seems screwy with a thing, right? Like I just today had somebody over the house to go fix something, and he couldn't quite figure it out. And then I was again analyzing things in my head. So it's things that I really get into. One of my favorite stories, real quick, before we get into anything, and the reason why I sing so many praises about Devon is I always like to, if I have a personal story about them, I really like to tell it that really affected me. It was my first, I was thinking it was definitely my first time at Mandy. And I was very new. And again, this story to illustrate why I value the people that I do is I was very new, and it was getting towards like a sunset type thing for a new person, like last in first out kind of thing, and I could kind of see it coming. And you know, for those first things, I'm not gonna give you the whole story, but like I was like, I didn't know who I could talk to yet. I didn't know anybody, and Mandy, for nothing, even then is a very elite club to be in. There's a lot of very smart people and have done a lot of really huge things, and I didn't know who like a friend was or whatever. And Devon just was always a friendly person, was always just that person who anybody, like I could people would recommend to go talk to. And you sat with me. I don't even know if you remember this or not, but I was like, hey Devon, like I kind of see some writing on the walls. We've had a lot of conversations about the industry and layoffs and things like that. And I was like, I don't know a lot, but I see this writing on the walls. Like, you know, can I ask you a question? And he stopped whatever he was doing. He was like, let's go downstairs. And we took the elevator down, and we sat in the lobby of the building, and he talked to me for 20, 30 minutes just about how things were and what options were and what things that I could. And he had no reason to have to do that. He had no reason to take some new kid, I mean, I was still in my 30s at that point, but like some new kid, quote unquote, and give that kind of advice and sit down with him and take that time and hang out. And that's one of those so many moments and bits you forget, and your head is like a sieve and things come and go, but those little things like stick, and it's that conversation that has got me through a lot of the other stuff. So I want to be sure I told that story to illustrate why we have Devon on, but it really kind of blends into the whole community engagement thing, which is why it's no surprise to me that Devon is one of the people that really does a lot and knows a lot and talks a lot about that community engagement. So when somebody says the words community engagement to you, Devon, when it applies to this industry, like what comes to your mind? Like what do you immediately think of?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of times, when people talk about it, they don't talk about it specifically. And so I'll talk about it really specifically. When I think about the community, I think about like my relationship to a broader group of folks, and it's actually kind of thinking about it in terms of obligation, right? I know that I learned a lot from others to get where I am, and it's because they exhibited trust. Bidirectional trust you've got to build, but to trust that something in the future is going to work out because you shared what you knew, that there was a time when that was a really novel idea. It made a very strong impression on me. And, I kind of cut my teeth under folks whose careers I think have really well reflected this. Christopher Glyard, he was one of the people who, gave me my introduction to incident response, sort of, this is what the trench looks like. This is how you comport yourself in a trench. This is what you need to think about when you're in the trench, because there are other people who don't know they're in the trench with you. They are ignorant of their circumstances. You have to be an ambassador. You have to be able to communicate with them in a way that doesn't terrify them, because you need them to stay in the trench. You're still fighting. This is an analogy that we could probably run roughshod over two ways, but I think it's important to think about it in terms of, who got you where you're going to be and who is looking out for the next generation. Who's looking out for the generation after them. And because eventually, it's, and this is true of a lot of industries, we might all age out, we might all retire, but this problem is not solved. And so making sure that we've got good custodians and stewards, not just of these technologies, but also these ideals, I think is really important.
Yeah.
Well, that's one thing that I wonder about, because I see the progression of certain fields are dying. It's like this, there was this big growth bubble, and then it kind of smoothed out a little bit, and it kind of is declining, in my opinion. And I wonder how much is because we put so much pressure and so much emphasis on, oh, you got to go to college, you have to get this degree, you have to do all these other things, where we could just do tradecraft, like a workshop or a certification, and get people there faster, and then get them the experience, get them the knowledge they need. I mean, I don't know. I worry about this field.
Unpopular, but when I cut my teeth, there were not college degrees that you could get. There were not, high school programs that you could take that to learn more than basically just using a typewriter. Even I was of the electric typewriter generation, so and that's a very different mindset than somebody who maybe 10 years ago graduated high school, because they graduated with the internet integrated in their course of study, and the technology is part of how they learn and how they use education. For some of us, that was not true. And part of it is, I think, is also we had to be curious to figure it out. And now there's just so much of a body of knowledge, just such a corpus of detailed knowledge, that maybe it's easy to also take it for granted. I struggle with it still, where it's my list of articles that I want to go back and read, and people's published research that I want to follow up on. That sometimes does get to be a pretty healthy stack. I imagine for other generations, maybe folks who are, just graduating now, they might not even consider that worthy of retention. They might just come in and then go. So there could be a couple of things happening industry wide.
Well, one thing when I was because I was overseeing a development team and other teams, is that I didn't really hire based off where you went to school. For lack of better, I could care less what college you came from and what degree you had. What I care about is who you were as an individual and how well you could fit in with everyone else. Because you know what? We could teach you anything we need to teach you. I could teach you how to program. Anyone on my team could teach you how to program at that time. We could teach you how to be a good programmer, how to debug, how to do all the stuff you need to do. But no, we can't teach you how to be a good person. We can't teach you how to have good work ethics. We couldn't teach you those things.
That's also cultural, right? And so part of it is, understanding, you can hire culture, and finding somebody who fits in those other ways, those non-informed, non-technical ways, is really, really important. For us, that's one of the most important hiring considerations, is not, are you technical enough, but do you fit? Do you work with the other pieces we've got? Or are you more like, a chemist would call it like a volatile component? Are you a volatile component for this team? Which doesn't mean that that person is like a bad hire. It just means that you've got to think about it in terms of all of the other chemicals in the team that you've got to counter. And that's really hard. We always hire for culture first. That way we don't fall in love with somebody who's like incredibly technical, but is a terrible fit for like the molecular composition of the team. We do that first. And that's our first wave of elimination, just because we want to make sure that we're saving the interview process for folks who not only do they fit with the team and have like maybe good reactions, but also, can do those technical things that we need done.
Yeah, because I mean, a good team is not just one individual, right? We're not looking for the Michael Jordan of the team. We're looking for everyone who could basically bounce off each other, ideals, grow as a team, and then work together, especially when the shit hit the fan and you have to fix what's coming up. Like, oh, we just released this bug, or oh, the database just went down, whatever. Like, those are the moments you could really measure a team. Not when everything is nice and easy and everything's going your way. You measure a team as its lowest point, and that's how you know if you have a strong and solid team. The moment people start going, that's not my responsibility, that's not my problem, that's when you go, well, you're not also working here for long. Because we don't need those type of people. We need people who are going to say, crap, this is happening, how do we fix this? And I don't know.
There's some good stuff going on in chat right now too about username not used, and Civiac.
How dare you mispronounce his name? That is
I'm
Civiac.
so sorry. I'm trying to be a bro. So no, they're talking also about, like, we're talking about community engagement and also like being a good leader is kind of what I would call some of that in a certain way. But a good question, or a good comment rather, was brought up, was the kind of people who ask questions, right? When you're a new person in the field, you kind of have to pull that out of some people as well, right? And so I think it's important not to be afraid to ask those questions, because that's like the good kind of counter to a really good like teacher is a good curiosity too. And that's both of those kind of help breed each other.
I have a question, which is, if you're hiring for cultural fit first, how do you avoid not bringing in diverse voices? Like, because it seems to me, if you're hiring for cultural fit, that may exclude some people that are not in that culture. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, we understand that to protect the world's data from attack, which broadly speaking is like the elastic security slogan, we understand that to do it, we actually have to resemble the world. And there's something really profound there about understanding that what a risk, perception of risk looks like in my culture is different than somebody else's. If I don't understand that, because I don't ask the question and I don't exhibit maybe natural curiosity, I never have the opportunity to take that into consideration. So for us, we kind of look at it in terms of not, hey, do you look like us? Do we have, do we have things that appear consistent, which is relatively superficial? It's like, do we have the capacity to achieve these things with any collection of team members? We've got team members who are incredibly talented malware researchers. We have, folks who are incredibly talented software engineers, but how they like to spend their time and the skills they're capable of wielding can be really different. We need both sets of skills in the team for the team to succeed. And that's one of the ways that we also safeguard against stuff like, we hire only folks who fit this mold, who resemble, this bulleted list. That's not sustainable. In teams that do that, they become really easily knocked out. They become brittle for reasons that are hard to predict.
So you've been around for a really long time, Devon, and have not aged a day. If anything else, you're aging backwards, but I'll get jealous about that later.
I think that was a compliment.
Charmer.
So do you see, so 96 to now, what is that? 20, 30 years almost dead, pushing 30 years. Are things better? Are they worse? Are they perpetually the same?
That's a great question. I like this question because I tend to think about my answer to it as like a preemptive strike. When people have asked me, what's the point of some of the stuff that you do, I like to bring up the fact that I remember the dawn of the industry. I remember what used to be. I have the benefit of remembering what was and kind of appreciating what is. So I think a little bit about it like this. Isn't it wild that we continue to solve the security problems with the same general approaches, the same general monetization heavy strategies, the same heavy equity investment strategies. And in spite of having the best technology we've arguably ever had, the most public awareness of these threats, the best information distribution and sharing capabilities in the world, we still have not really meaningfully stopped the spread of this phenomenon. And I think it is because we perceive it in a way that is inflexible. And there is a business which, call it an unpopular opinion, really monetizes treatment over cures. And so those factors, I think, put us where we are.
What do you say that about a lot of industries? But I don't know. I mean, I get what you're saying, but I just think it's this human factor. Like anytime it's like chaos theory, like whatever can go wrong will go wrong. I mean, it's just a matter of time. I don't know. I think we had that. Did we have a conversation earlier, guys, about this? And it was kind of similar, chaos theory and IT.
Sure, probably, yeah. What do you think has to change?
Previous ones, right?
Sorry, I think all of our episodes are chaos theory.
They are.
It's literally the layout of the show is chaos theory.
What do you think? Are you trying to basically say that like attackers are leveling up and defenders are leveling up, and like there's just going to be this? Is that what you mean by chaos? Is there's always going to be new ways to break things, and then there's like maybe
I think it's
kind of like things. There's going to be.
I think it's more like what we're doing is so fast and so like it's quickly evolving and changing so fast and so rapidly that the time it takes to really pay attention and slow down to understand the full extent of what we're doing is you never have that moment. So you can't understand the gravity of what's happening and understand all the security holes, all the areas where penetration can, like the security holes, all the areas of issues or problems that can arise from it. Because you don't have that, there's going to be people who spend that time to then focus and harness and hone in on those areas. It's just a matter of time. It's like when you build the first building, like you're going to build a building to some standard, but it's not going to be as perfect as you build it 10 years from now. Having that time to mature and grow and harness and hone in your skills. I just think our industry is changing so fast. No one really gets to hone in on their skills. Because by the time you learn, I'm great at C#, everyone's using Go. Okay, let me learn Go now. Everyone's using this. Is this constantly evolving? Frameworks are constantly changing. Our compilers are constantly trying to adapt and make things easier to make it kind of high-level language systems, so that way they can be more widely available to developers. It's just so much happening all the time that I don't think, with the speed we're going, there's no way to stop the constant errors, constant issues that's going to progress from it.
To give a good example of why I don't think we've progressed as much, even myself, who has been doing this not nearly as much as most of the people on the show, especially not Devon, I was just silently freaking out that something was wrong with my broadcasting software. Nothing was clicking, nothing was doing it, and I realized that I was pressing one mouse button. I was pressing my right one as I was trying to click with my left one, and nothing was working. And then I realized that and said, I shouldn't be in this business anymore. I was like, it's not working. Everything's gonna stop streaming. I can't click on anything. And like, I'm trying to like left click on everything. And I realized I had just a little bit of pressure on my other mouse button. So when you have those kinds of problems, it's no wonder we are where we are, because we have people like me doing this shit.
I mean, I guess my thing is, if you ever look at a compiler and look at your code after it goes through compiling, you can have the cleanest code. Once it goes through compiler, the interpretation of that code is going to be flawed to some degree because it's inferring what you thought it meant to do.
My firmware is permanently fried.
That's where security holes starts bubbling from. So,
Devon, are you encouraged by anything in this industry? Like, have we made any strides? Because I don't want to be the perpetual curmudgeon that just bemoans the fact that I'll always have a job. What encourages you?
I mean, I think I'm generally really optimistic about where we are and where we've gotten to. Again, I think you could look at the end result and say, hey, we haven't solved security, and you could be very discouraged by that. But on the other hand, all of those other advances have still happened, and that's pretty remarkable. The intra-process introspection that now people can get like for free, not with an enterprise license, not essentially with a Ferrari level investment, but just available for them to have visibility. That is completely different than when my security journey began. And I'll say 2010 is when it really became official, because that's when I claimed it as part of my career history. It's my job title reflected it. But even so, over 13, 14 years, tremendous progress. Not to mention, I think too, we're starting to see the calculus shift a little bit, because where previously states used to say, oh, hey, I'm hands off, I cannot be responsible for this. It's just the way it is, get used to it. Well, they've changed their tune. Now we've started to realize that some of these security risks that were abstract and non-specific, they actually are specific. And I think what we're seeing is the implications both from just public safety, national security, food safety, energy security. These are very important concepts. And now I think we're seeing a little bit of enforcement. But I think everything happens like a push and a pull. It's like how, waves, recede, and eventually they come back as tides. Like we see the water never leave the ocean. We're still there. What we need, I think, to focus on is actually changing the landscape. That is how this happens. A lot of times we think about what we do as interrupting, disturbing, interfering with these groups, these capabilities. But they don't all just steal money. They don't all just steal email and spam people. Sometimes these are groups that put people in mass graves. So when you think about it in terms of haves and have-nots, that's a really important ideal. There are people who are targeted perpetually. In fact, there are threat groups that target everybody. But the tools to deal with that is actually only available to a very small subset. I think it's starting to change. I think I'm very optimistic about that gravity, that pivot. I just wish it was faster. I'm impatient like everybody here.
What would you say, even to yourself, if you said you're around 2010, 2012 is when you really started considering it part of who you are and your career. If you could go back to 2012 Devon, or even 2010 Devon, and be you're going to hear something I wish you would have known from future Devon. Or were you just absolutely perfect?
Maybe I would be less dismissive of things now than I was then. When I was a consultant, maybe I felt a little bit more like a cowboy, felt a little bit more like out on the frontier in a place where I have direct agency to affect outcomes. When maybe that was true in a very small scale, I don't think I appreciated what impact really was. And every now and then I see a peer in the industry do something truly impactful that nobody notices, that maybe is quite subtle. But the net result is that those are folks who are thinking about improving everyone's security in a very equal and balanced way. That's a thing that's really hard. It's a thing that I aspire to achieve. But I think if we can pursue more of those types of outcomes, if we can think a little bit maybe altruistically, selflessly, I think the industry has tremendous potential to solve this a little bit further, and maybe not completely, but in that escalation, that back and forth spy versus spy. wouldn't it be cool if we finally felt like we were on top?
Or as Jake just, or the other, you know what? I'm not even gonna dignify Jake's thing with a response. Have you done any work in chat? They had said, I'm going to keep this on topic and interesting and not just about my perpetual beefs with Jake. It said, kids, holy crap, talk to some kids in cyber programs and you'll sleep better at night. It's awesome to see young kids so excited in the field and what they do. Have you been a part of any like initiatives that had to do with kids?
Cyber Patriot is one of my favorite programs. It starts in middle school, and I live in the DC area. There are a number of really great Cyber Patriot programs at different schools. It's an awesome way to help, I think, plant the seed that somebody's going to kind of like cultivate into interest in this industry. And you'll be very shocked, but these are very young people who are very mature. They're very hungry to learn. And just like a young person can learn anything else, this is knowledge that they can apply. It might seem like it takes a lot of, again, specialized skill or experience, but I don't think it does. And for folks who've worked at like the collegiate level, like, National CCDC, another great program, again, older kids, again, folks who are maybe closer to entering industry. But again, a great place to engage in knowledge transfer, share stuff that and, cultivate that in a group that is going to, pass it on to other folks. So you're not just educating some students, you're actually allowing them to educate their peers in places where maybe you don't even have access.
Yeah, I always get, I was considering, I wanted my son to come with me to Vegas this year. He's 8 years old. And the first thing that I get from literally like, oh, Vegas, he's only 8. Is he even going to understand any of that? And I say, are you kidding me? The best lesson to have, it's an expensive one because you're stuck with them for quite a few years, is having a kid and watching them, mine especially, just soak things up and take on so many things so quickly. Like, just as an example, I had gotten one of those Oculus Quest thing 2 VR rigs because I was going to use it for the DEF CON group's virtual meetup. Never got a chance to because I was gooning Dev. But I had the rig and I bought it. Shut up. It's the first time I mentioned it today. And it's a $500 rig just sitting around. And one day, about 6 months ago, he picks it up. He goes, hey, what's this thing? And I said, oh, Daddy will teach you how. He goes, I'll figure it out. And I think he asked me 1 or 2 questions, like where the power button was. And before I know it, he's like asking me to download games, and within a week, he's leading parties of raiding things in this Monkey Quest game. And now he's holding court and he has friends and running these things. And then he's on my computer. He just asked about a command prompt for the first time the other day. He was like, hey, what's that command prompt thing I see you use? I was like, come here, child. Let me tell you, I'm keeping him away from PowerShell. That way lies madness. But it's so I hate when people are like, oh, they're too young. No, absolutely not. And to get them that excited, there's a wonderful young woman, Bia Scilab. I don't know if you've run across on her on Twitter. Very deeply involved with Girls Who Hack. And she's been up on the Hill and all these things. She's part of my local DEF CON group, and I've seen her come from 7, 8 years old to she's almost 16 now, and it's been amazing. So like my first thing is like whenever anybody says, oh, they're too young, absolutely not. And that's what that does give. That feels me, like you said, who's the next, right? Who's coming next?
But Danny, that comes with a caveat too, don't it? Because like I have 4 kids, unfortunately.
That's your fault, not mine.
But like, I want them to be them, right? I want them to grow up in the way they want to grow up. No, let me take that. Hold on, let me explain that a little bit. I want them to decide their path for themselves. Sure. Now, so that the caveat is, I would love for them to all come into cybersecurity or into programming or into something where I can show them. And I'll put the olive branch out for them. But if they choose not to go down that path,
of course, then
it is what it is.
Oh, I'm not tying them to my chair and saying, here's Arch, good luck.
There's a lot of parents who unfortunately do that. And they're like, well, we're 5 generations of whatever, and you're going to be the 6th generation going down this.
Okay.
I'd almost rather him saying, hey, Dad, I'm going to go live in the woods. I don't want anything to do with this. Well, I worked in cybersecurity. We have the money for that. Here's your tent. Go away.
I know. I'm just want to show that caveat. Like, if you want to bring your kids into it, that's great. Just make sure they really want to be in there, because the worst thing it is to teach someone who don't want to learn this.
It's more socially acceptable for like a farmer to graze a farmer child who raises a third and fourth and fifth, right? So it's a little bit different than there's the stigma that's still unfortunately associated with your dad's a hacker, you're not going to be a hacker like your dad, right? Like, I think that's a little bit of what people are saying. Like, how dare you bring your kid to a security conference? Like, no one ever would say, how dare you bring your kid to an agricultural conference, right? Like,
I would. That's boring as hell. That sounds boring. That's even you saying it.
Speaking of like hand-holding toddlers, let's talk a little bit about executives. What are some of the most? I tried to get through that segue without laughing. Devin, when it comes to not everybody, especially now, right? Like the economy is kind of doing whatever the hell it's doing, and people following the leader and all these things, and budgets are shrinking. It's Q4; they're opening up a little bit. What do you have? Like, what are some of the most important things that those kind of like organizations, especially with limited budgets, can do to improve their own security? The ones that can't afford the Mandiants, can't afford the CrowdStrikes, can't afford, Splunk.
I tend to think about it like, preparing for an expedition, right? You've got stuff that you do that's very easy and small. Like, you've got to make sure you've got, boots, you've got to have a tent, you've got to have rope, et cetera. But you typically gather your provisions in waves. And I think that something like that could really apply for folks who are just starting their cybersecurity journey. They know they've got a lot to do. Well, it starts with eyes. Like, what can you literally see? If you can't see anything, like, there are free ways to solve that problem. Get eyes. That's not even like data retention. That's just, what can you see right now? What can you see over the last 24 hours? Full stop. And then you work from visibility to capability. I can see stuff. What can I do about it? Like, what agency do I have to affect outcomes? What are those tools? How am I using them? Do my people know how to use them? And you can cover a lot of ground with this, and you can achieve really, powerful results depending on how aggressively your organization is targeted. But from there, it's then like sustainability. It's like, what is your program? How are you hiring? What is the functional strata of these orgs? Like, how are you doing budgeting? The bigger pieces. But unfortunately, what happens is, I think a lot of orgs, they start at the top of the pyramid where they have the least information. Like, well, okay, let's come up with a budget. Let's come up with a dollar amount. Let's not do anything until we have that number, which is fictional. It's not even real to them. It's just a number written down that they kind of have proposed, projected, imagined. When you're planning, you're not doing. So I would say, like, just start doing. Get eyes. Deploy stuff. There's free stuff to do that. Solve that problem first. You'll be remarkable, surprised by, like, your approach to things, I think, once you can actually see these problems. And then from there, you can figure out, like, what problems do we even have? Instead of investing in the solution first and, like, pursuing that, just start with, like, what even are your problems? Like, maybe the way that you're targeted and the way that you're seeing threat activity in your enterprise actually doesn't impact your risk as a business. Cool. Like, you have more options than 99% of your peers, but that's a great place to be. You just never know if you have the upper hand if you never ask. And some of these folks, they're just like, let's go right to the back of the napkin, pick a number, and, work backwards. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Another thing I like to tell people too is, like, understand who your attackers are. Know your attack. Like, if you're a small startup company and you're doing a very unique niche thing, I don't think China is coming after you. I'm just going to put that out there. So, like, take the time to actually take a couple, like, really think about it. Who is your attackers? Who's coming for you, and plan for that. As well as look inside your own internal company. Maybe there's people who want to grow into security positions. Maybe you could teach them, train them, and not only is that going to get you to more secure environment cheaper, but it's also going to boost their morale. They're going to be like, oh, I'm now finally getting into this role. And don't be scared if they leave you in 2-3 years and go someplace else. Foster that. Foster them to learn, to them to be comfortable and gain the knowledge. And if they leave, and you just recycle, do the same thing over again. As a manager, I didn't. This is gonna sound awful, but as a manager, I loved when my people moved on to better things. Because then I know they're growing their career path. They're taking the next step and they're maturing. It's not about, what they could do for me right now. It's more about, how can we build a team that is growing, constantly learning, and doing the best. And sometimes people move on and you just got to be okay with it.
The worst part about that whole thing was just imagining you as a manager.
Actually, I was actually a pretty good manager.
Being responsible for other people.
I think they were just as happy to see Dev leave as he was to see them leave.
God, is he gone finally?
Wow.
So on the subject of departures, like I'll admit that I am like of two minds of this, and part of it, it's like the human component, which is like you've got people who you get close with and you are invested in them, and just because they're leaving, like that doesn't have to change, but sometimes you feel like your investment is going somewhere else, and like you can still root for them. It's a different perspective that I don't think a lot of people necessarily train themselves to approach. That person is going to be able to go on and achieve stuff that maybe was not in your lane. You did not, those were not on your dream board. You were not thinking about those objectives. You didn't particularly value those outcomes. But the worst thing I think is to trap a person in that role that they don't love, that they're not feeling fulfilled, because that impacts a lot of stuff. When you don't love your job, the quality of your work, whether you intended to or not, is not the same. And sometimes what we do, that really matters. Like you round a corner because, today's a bad day and you're not really feeling a connection to the work. The impact can actually be pretty dire,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you definitely never want to just hold on to someone for holding on's sake. But the other thing is when they move on, you got to do it in a way where you're fostering them and you're helping them move on. Because with that sense, the message that sends to everyone else and staying is that we're okay. It's not a taboo like, oh, he's a traitor, I'm going to treat him like a traitor kind of thing. And if I was to leave, that's going to happen to me. Is no, well, I'm be okay with it. They're going to move on, and other people are going to move up in rank, and we're just going to grow as a team.
This one hits me close because I definitely have worked for places where that was the convention, where like when you resigned, even though you were not dying, people treated you like you were dead because they knew, hey, I'm going to be on a different work schedule. Maybe you work for a competitor, and so I'm not supposed to say stuff. And the thing is, like, professional friendships are really hard for a lot of folks in our industry to cultivate. And that's a great culture to make sure that you're never building social networks. You're never letting these industry relationships blossom into partnerships and friendships. I think that's just really sad. We've never been prejudicial when somebody leaves the team. We're always very supportive. We always talk about it. And I think normalizing, maybe not normalizing departure, but making sure that people know that when they are ready to graduate, to move on, their colleagues are not going to resent them. We're not going to feel very critical about their success. You want to champion their success.
Yeah, that leads, and you said what you said just now was very interesting to me because my thing is forming really to a point where I've had to temper my relationship. It's being fond of people because I know what the inevitability will be, and having a manager or something who I've been with for a long time, and it's just, hey, naturally time for me to move on. I got to go do other things, and then the cut happens, and then you never talk to that person again. And I never really thought of it from their point of view. I mean, we're all human. We all have the same, emotions and things like that. And thinking just because it was a happy occasion for me to go and do other things and it was nothing, negative in their column, they might have felt a certain way. And I don't think I thought enough about that, where then I would have ill feelings because I'm not getting a call returned, or I'm like, hey man, what happened? Well, they invested a lot in you. And while they're probably professionally and personally happy for you, I don't think I ever considered that part before you said that. So even I'm capable of learning and growing on this show. What else was
I was going to say just one more thing on that before I'm going to step over Jake, because we started talking about this a little bit and building community, and one of the things is that creating that next generation and expanding exponentially, right? You're building your own structure. So, I mean, you teach 2 people, they teach 2 people. You've now basically created this, child, grandchild type tree. And so how cool is it when a coworker that you mentored leaves the organization and then goes on to do something amazing, and then you can feel that joy with that person. And so I think that's what's really strong. And I feel like this industry does a good job in the right light of that. There's definitely the people who do and the people that don't.
Yeah.
But
there's a double-edged sword in this industry. You're gonna get the people who support you and the people who try to tear you down as quick as possible.
that's true. That's when you find the people that you gravitate to.
Jake, tie-dye warrior, you've been very quiet all hour. You got anything?
I'm just sitting and listening.
You're
man.
just
Sometimes
here for
it's-
eye candy? That is a beautiful sweater, by the way.
Thank you very much. I am Knuff.
Do you actually know what color it is?
We can't hear you, Jake.
Oh, stop it, Dev. We don't do
not-
this anymore. No, because no. That's the one joke we don't make on the show, because that involves me having to do audio things and I freak out. So no jokes that make Danny freak out operationally. Thank you very much. Jake is actually colorblind. Jake, do you know what color that sweater is?
Yes, it's several.
Oh.
Yeah, we had a conversation earlier before you came back on.
He's not wrong.
What a catch-all
What
answer.
time about talking about my colorblind today? Like, I don't know what's going on.
Well, because I didn't know.
The dog,
and it's
the
a new
dog
thing.
wants your hugs too. Whoever username not used is.
Devin, we're
Vito wants your hugs.
all right. I'm sorry I went to you, Devin. I did spend a little time trying to explain to Devin what the show was like, but you really got to be here to experience it. So one of the things we're getting close to our kind of end here. By the way, thank you so much for coming on. Like I just love seeing your face, and you get better looking with every passing decade.
Not creepy at all.
What do you do? Hey, listen, Devin was here. I knew Devin far before you, so you can just sit there.
That's just jealousy coming out of Dev's mouth. Is all.
Oh no, that's not what that is.
He's jealous. He'll never be as he'll never. And Devin and I don't normally talk. Like we don't talk. Like we'll say hi on LinkedIn once in a while, just kind of catch up and be like, hey man, how are you? And I still feel closer to him than you. And I've worked with you every day
I'm
for
an
a year.
acquired taste, and anybody who knows me very closely, they understand this.
Well, you're a taste that I have.
It's problematic. I'm not very social. I've never really been particularly social, so that's an area that I can fake it really well. But
Not everybody is though.
Not necessarily the most authentic version of me.
No, not everybody is though. But what I want to know is, what do you do? This is just a personal question that I like asking people. Like, what do you do to wind down, right? Because you got a lot going on. Especially when you were a consultant, like you're handling pretty heavy things. You are what I would call one of the greater minds of our industry. So what do you do when you want to shut off? Like, what do you do just to hang out and relax?
I need a lot of stuff. I find, and maybe this is true of a lot of people in our industry, I find that like my tolerance for any single activity doesn't really scratch the itch. So it's kind of a lot of things. We were talking in chat about Baldur's Gate. So I've, Dungeons and Dragons since middle school. At this point, like multi-generational campaigns for 30-ish years of my life. I'm actually doing 2 of them concurrently right now, and you've caught me in between weekly sessions. So we'll see how my coworkers deal with the problems that they'll encounter on Sunday. I'm a seasonal hunter. I grew up in a farming community, and I spent a lot of time there.
I had no idea.
Yep. Oh yeah. I grew up around dairy. In fact, I got into technology sort of on accident. Dairy farms used to use heat to pasteurize milk. But in the 90s where I grew up, it was much more common to use flash pasteurization using ultraviolet. And so I was maintaining the computers that did that, irradiation in barns and, milk houses and like places like that. That's where I kind of refined the skill set. So I've always been kind of a farmish person, an outdoorsy kind of person. I hide it a lot better now that I'm an adult, but
no, I never saw that. But you know what? You have the build of somebody that could throw a hay bale.
It's not as great as it was when I was 25. I'm gonna be honest.
What did I
smaller
even
hay
mean?
bale. Look at his shoulder. He's got very broad shoulders. I think he could chuck at least a medium-sized hay bale. No, I grew up in Lancaster County, so that's interesting to me. Like, I had my parents used to have dinner at an Amish farm. They made homemade Amish pizza, which was very kind of them, but I don't think I'll ever do it again.
Amish pizza.
I'm very familiar.
Without the lights on.
I had other careers before this. I was a trade mason, so I used to work with stone and did foundation work, and I did post and beam construction, and I worked on a lot of barns made between like 1880 and 1920, and did a lot of restoration. I still like to do those things. It's just I don't have a barn, so it's much harder to scratch that specific itch, if you catch my drift.
I have a barn, dude. I bought the house we bought about 5 years ago is 200 years old. It's its own farmhouse, and I have a barn that is actually as big, if not bigger, than my house. You ever need a barn to scratch that itch? You come up to Pennsylvania.
All right, I can bring some tools. I know what I'm doing.
And they're all like it's like the big like hand hewn beams and all this stuff. Yeah, I gotta come up and hang out in my barn. We do a thing every year called BarnCon, as a matter of fact, where I have friends up. I built a movie screen in the barn with a projector, and we watch movies and hang out and grill outside every year.
This has got to be the shiftiest way that Danny has ever gotten free labor. He's like, wait a minute. He's like, the industry has not been that good to me.
Devon, before you go, make sure someone knows you're going by Danny and where
there are witnesses. Multiple people are here. So at the end of every show, Devon, we like to close it out with asking people how their week was, if they have any wins, or if they just have, even if their week was shitty, what's the least shittiest thing about it. So I'm gonna you can think about yours for a minute. We'll go around to these other three monkeys, and we'll do our little wins of the week thingy that Jake makes me do, and then I've come around to, but I don't like to admit it. And let's get Dev out of the way. Dev, what do you have anything good happen this week?
I don't know if it's good or not. So I'm not a really big Azure AD or Entra, whatever the hell they call it, AD person. So I'm Active Directory. That's what I know. That's what I've been doing for a long time. So going to Azure AD was kind of somewhat different because assuming that it's kind of weird still. But learning a area that I never thought I would learn, and still wish I never had learned. But no, just getting that on that was interesting this week, as Brandon and other people from the team can say.
Yeah, that was a fun conversation that we got to have yesterday about, well, who knows this stuff? And I'm like, literally nobody knows this, Dev. Like, sorry.
Yeah, and Microsoft, thank you so much for all the documentation you put out there. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, one company. Never mind.
Username not used. Thank you for subscribing to our channel. We appreciate that. Brandon.
It was because I promised that we're going to do a Trimarc live from your barn someday.
During the DEF CON safe mode, we had Lintal come up, and Lintal ran Hacker Jeopardy from my barn.
Oh, that'd be sweet.
And was never seen again.
He's fine. He's in Indiana.
I saw him.
He's alive. I talked to him yesterday.
Yeah, he's at Gurkon. Yeah, actually, probably doing that now-ish, right? He's doing the Hacker Charlatan thing.
Yeah, he's doing Hacker Charlatan, but I'm asking you a question right now. What's your win of the week?
I know, bro. I don't have a great win. Like, I'm honestly just excited that.
What did you do yesterday, Brandon?
Oh, I did a webcast. And
you did a great webcast yesterday. It went well.
Yes.
We have never actually, of the webcasts that I have run since we've been here, none of the participants have actually went into the chat to say as many good things about our host as they had of you yesterday.
I think that was mostly just because John was one of my friends and the other one was my boss. So,
well, you don't have to give real stuff. The best stories aren't exactly true. You don't have
to. Don't forget the bot you asked me to write so you can put in all those comments.
That's exactly what you did earlier today. We were in the back doors. We were in the back doors and breaches thing today, and you admitted something to Jason that we were trying to sneak by him. Why are you so honest?
I'm a nice guy. I don't know. I can't.
Good Lord.
Blue team to the heart.
Jesus. All right, good. Jake, it's your turn.
I'm working on it. Okay, I'm trying. Jesus. Trying to get better.
All right, go upstairs and rip the labels off your mattresses right now.
Do something. Use your blender in another way it's not supposed to be. I don't know. Like, do something. Jake, what's your
my win was to finally get back under the bar after 4 months of not being able to.
Yay, beefcake
again. So yeah, it feels good. I am sore everywhere after moving just the empty bar. So yeah, it's
whiskey, scotch. What kind? You didn't say.
You're funny.
No, that's for after lifting because it helps baked protein or whatever. Mine's gonna be real quick. It's literally having Devon on the show. That's my win of the week because it's been a while. So
that's a cop out.
It's not a cop out, and it's not hyperbole, and it's
like a cop out, and I'm even me.
No, no, it really, and I had a lot of really good things happen this week. I just really enjoyed talking to my friend Devon. Did you give enough time to think about?
Yeah. So it's not my win, actually. I'm not gonna, but for some of my researchers who've been tracking a PRC-based group all over Southeast Asia, we're gonna be diming them out next week.
Yeah,
a bunch of previously unknown families, and it's gonna be a good time. And we just imagine them sitting in their windowless building, shaking their heads and going to tell their boss what we named their malware. That's my favorite part of any week, when you realize someone's got to tell their boss what you call malware. And their boss, even though these are educated people, you just know he's going to be like, well, why? Why did they call it that? And that's the enigma I just live for.
That's exciting. Where, if people want to actually see when that happens, where can they find you, and where can they find Elastic Security Labs?
The ElasticSec Labs Twitter handle is where we tweet and generally socialize all this. The elastic.co/security-labs site is where we publish all the articles. In GitHub, we've got all of our artifacts. So if you want to grab the Yara signatures or any of the indicators, anything like that, you can get that right off GitHub. Everything for free forever.
Nice. Well, Devon, thank you so much, my friend, especially for spending time on a Friday with us. If you ever got anything you want to, chill or talk about or just hang out, any guests that we have on have a lifetime pass to come back here, whatever that means. It's not exactly a Disney pass.
I was promised Sean Metcalf.
Yeah, he's at GurCon, but the next time you come back, Sean will be here. It was a scheduling snafu, but I promise Sean will be back next time. And what's that?
Good. I'll give him a hard time.
Yeah, absolutely. He's holding down the fort down in Grand Rapids. And for everybody else, thank you, username Matt and Lakeith and everybody who was hanging out in the chat. The best part of why we do this is so that we entertain you and we tell you things and give you free tools and talk about things you want to hear about or just interact. Like, that's really the main reason why we do this. But if you are in the need of some professional services, trimarcsecurity.com/services for all your Active Directory, Azure/Entra AD services and VMware. And you may want to start checking out a website called trimarcvision.com. I don't know. Just a feeling I have, trimarcvision.com.
It'd be nice if someone had a URL like on the screen right now.
Yeah, but it's a slow roll out of stealth, but you should go check it out. And we do this every Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 1800 UTC. We got blogs, we got white papers. All of our stuff goes up on hub.trimarcsecurity.com, and all of our free tooling, including Jake's locksmith tool, is up on github.com/Trimarc. So next week, I forget who our guest. Oh, you know who we got next week? Paul.com himself. Paul Asadorian's going to be on the show. I finally got him on. He's very gracious and said, yeah, absolutely, I'd love to come on. So we finally got Paul coming on. Got some time on the schedule. So again, another one of those people that I'm going to try not to gush over it, but I'm going to fail. So until then, thank you, Devon, again. Thank you to my boys, and we will see y'all next week.
It's Friday.
We can still do hot mics if you want.
Well, we're gonna mention that you're a goon because you only mentioned it once, and normally you mention it 5 or 6 times.
What? That I'm a goon?
Yeah, like 10 times.
I think I'm growing as a person where I don't have to flex that as much.
Dev mentions it more than you do now, so I think we have to turn this back around, and we're going to start the count the number of times that Dev mentions it.
Did we give Dev his pink slip yet? I never mind. I was supposed to tell him that.
You can't scare me with a good time.
Trimarcvision.com.